At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, folks. This is Greg, joined by always my faithful co-host Joe.
Hello.
And this is Super NES Podcast, episode number 204. We are covering a port of an arcade game in this episode, Magic Sword, which may or may not be obscure depending upon your age and or tendency to hang around in arcades in the early 90s, like the original arcade game that was available. So I have history with both the arcade game and the Super NES ports, which is why I want to cover this game for the podcast eventually. But a friend of the show, did mention they were interested in this game as well because they were a big fan of the arcade game and actually did not know there was a Super NES port of the game available. So we bumped down the list a little bit to accommodate them because we love feedback. Hint, hint. So if anybody mentions a game that they want to covered, we'll probably get bumped up on the list sooner rather than later. So there's incentive for you folks out there. But anyway, did you have any experience at all with this game, Joe? Either arcade or Super NES?
So this was the first time playing the Super NES version. The arcade, because of course I had to play it, wondering where this game came from. I think I've touched the arcade at least once before, but actually, while we were preparing for this episode, I bought the Capcom Stadium 1 and 2 on the Switch, and this game is included in that.
Yes.
So, by the way, the deal was crazy. It was $30 for everything for the second stadium, and it was $20 for the first stadium. Like, steal and a half.
Which system did you buy it on?
On the Switch.
On the Switch, okay.
On the eShop, yeah.
Yep.
So it was well worth the money. But yeah, so, I'd played this once before, not in an actual arcade, obviously emulating through MAME. And then once I saw it was part of that Capcom collection, I played it again there. So, yeah.
I would not be surprised if you played this game back in the day because this was a very popular arcade game. So the game was designed by Capcom, who always had a very strong arcade presence for a long time.
Right.
And it's similar to many other games. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But the arcade game came out. But the arcade game came out in 1990. During when arcades were getting a little bit of a renaissance. This is before Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter 2 had come out. Mm-hmm. But there were more arcade games coming out in this time period. So arcades were already starting to do a bit better than they had been in the late 80s. But yeah, this was a very popular arcade game. For a while, and it's not very hard to see why, because I also went back and replayed the arcade game again to prepare the podcast, and it's a pretty fair arcade game, all things considered, because of course it is a quarter muncher, like all arcade games are. Right. However, that said, it's more of an easier quarter muncher than many other arcade games of time period, because it is possible to learn the game. To get good at it, quote unquote, right. And to be able to make your way through it without, probably one row of quarters of less. So, it definitely is a game that that definitely is more accessible to somebody like in arcades. The hindsight of that, it does make the arcade game a little bit easier than many other arcade games, similar to it. But whether or not it's a good thing or bad thing is up to you. But so the arcade game actually has a lot in common with the earlier Capcom game from 1987 called Black Tiger. A lot of the same elements and gameplay and whatnot were carried over in that game, like in this game. It obviously refined and better off. But not only Black Tiger, Magic Sword also takes inspiration from a lot of other games, I think. This game reminds me of numerous other games. Golden Axe, it definitely has similarities to.
Yep.
it also has similarities to some other like beat 'em up. Like some others like Gauntlet maybe a little bit. There's many other side-scrolling action games that it's similar to that I can't think of like right now. So.
I was going to say, if you can think of any side-scrolling action game where you scroll to the right and you end up with a boss, this is very much in that vein.
True. It's also very similar to another Capcom game, Knights of the Round. It's just the gameplay for that is also very similar in this as well too. But the premise is different enough. The unique things this game had, at least in the arcade, is that one, multiple players. You could have like you figure two players play together simultaneously, like on screen. Two, you can get companions to join you to help you out on the screen, which is nice. And three, there's a tower that you have to climb in this game. So it's like it's not like typical like long stages.
Right.
The stages are actually like fairly short, but you're playing up short, but there's a lot of them. 51 altogether if you count the intro, the intro stage.
Yeah.
So it's like it's actually like fairly short. So the way the game's presented is a bit different than many other games that this time period at least. So not hard to understand why this game was popular. Was popular like in the arcades.
And spoiler, I did not finish the Super Nintendo version because I had beat the arcade version. And I was burnt out by the time I got through with the Super Nintendo.
Understandable,
version.
the games are the same.
So one of the things I was going to point out that's unique about the arcade game is the fact that there are multiple endings. Granted, it's only two, but
two endings. Yes, the good
you
ending,
have two endings depending on whether you embrace the black orb or you destroy it. And I did not know if that actually carried over to the SNES version or not.
It did.
But I did like that mechanic where, no matter how you fought on the way up the tower, like at that last moment on the tower after you defeat the boss, you have that chance to be like, you know what? I'm just going to rule the world.
Right. So, definitely. That is very cool. We might as well just mention the plot of this game. The story behind it is like pretty generic D&D fantasy as far as that goes. There's a dark lord like named Drogmar who lives in a tower, and he's creating an evil crystal known as the black ore, which will allow him to be able to rule the world forever. He's not quite ready yet. So your hero, with the companions that you find, you'll decide to climb the tower to defeat him. And as Joe just mentioned, at the very end of the game, you have the option of either destroying the black orb to save the world, or if you want to, you can just keep the orb yourself and you rule the world yourself, like the Dark Lord, which is a very nice feature for sure. So the popularity of the game, it made sense. Made sense a home port like we get developed. Because but for some reason the Super NES is the only system the game got ported to. I never found any plans to release it to Genesis. Somebody has in recent years made a hack of the game on Genesis.
Okay.
You like the Genesis, so you can play it that way now if you want to. But Super NES was the only version of the game that came out for home release. March 1992 for Japan, April 1992 for North America. So very early Super NES release. As a result, the game just shows some of the same typical early Super NES issues. Slowdown, whatever that that many early Super NES games have, unfortunately. But obviously, being a home port, things get stripped down a bit from the arcade version in this game, and this game's no exception. So the major differences is this one is that there's far fewer enemies on screen because the Super NES can't handle as many enemies on screen.
Right.
Like the arcade hardware can do. There's a slowdown that I mentioned already.
Yep.
One player only, unfortunately. The second player ability was cut out. But beyond that, everything else is here. You still have the companions, the weapons. You still have the basic gameplay. The graphics and music were downsized a little bit, of course, fit in the system.
Right.
But all in all, this is a pretty, I thought this is a pretty favorable conversion as you would expect from Capcom, because Capcom, of course, was very good at making like arcade ports on systems, and I thought this game was like no exception.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was a really good port, and this actually surprised me.
What did you think about Vis-a-Vis, the Super NES port, when it compares to the arcade version?
I thought it was pretty faithful, for what it could do.
Right.
I knew it wasn't going to be able. The second player thing, I feel like they could have done that.
They could have for a later Super NES game. I think they did, but again, this being an early Super NES game, they didn't bother with such things in like early games.
Right, and I was going to say, once you start playing it and you get into the weeds, you realize that once too many enemies are on screen and you start to see that flicker and slow down, you realize right away why they didn't do 2 players. Because if they had 2 players at that particular moment when you got the enemies flooding the screen, with one, it's just that slow, choppy, flicker and everything else.
Yep.
If you had 2 on there, it would be like hitting the slow-mo button times 10. I wouldn't be surprised if the game would crash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it would be that bad. So I understand why they cut it out. That being said, I actually really enjoyed the dynamic of the companions.
It's very fun. Yep,
and they all have different abilities, which is fantastic. And of course, I wrote all those down. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I will say,
yeah, go ahead and watch it because this is a beer. I mean, we don't have a lot of things to talk about anyway. So go ahead.
So you have the Amazon, who's fast, but they have low firepower. They fire like 2 consecutive crossbow bolts in a straight line.
And as you level up the character, leveling up the companions also like increase their increase their weapon. I think level 8's the highest they can go.
So
is that right?
Yes, and it also it depends on who the companion is on what it levels up. So with the Amazon, it levels up the firepower. Then they have the big man. He's tough and very powerful, but he's also very slow. He throws a large axe that automatically returns in like a boomerang fashion. And when you level him up, it increases his damage and speed. Then you have the knight. He's very tough and powerful, throws multiple spears in a spreading forward path. Leveling up increases his damage and number of spears thrown. I did see on quite a few, facts and, videos talking about this particular game that the knight was the way to go. That was the favorite companion. I did not share that consensus. We'll get to mine as we go through this. The Lizard Man is tough and powerful, throws multiple swords in a straight line, kind of like the Knight. Leveling up increases the damage and number of swords thrown. Cool thing about the Lizard Man is, 1, he's an enemy, and 2, you can only recruit him when you're holding a diamond ring. Otherwise, he just attacks you, and you have to treat him like a regular enemy. He, in my opinion, is better than the Knight. So if you were able to find the diamond ring, absolutely recruit the Lizard Man. And I think because of the fact that he flies, he does a little better as far as covering most of the screen. So he's definitely one of the priority companions. But my favorite is next. That's the Ninja. He's fast but weak and has low firepower. He throws multiple shurikens in a spreading forward path. His throwing stars will ricochet off of surfaces. That is important later on as you're climbing the tower. Leveling up increases his firepower and his ability to throw more shurikens. So this is the one that I used the most. I leveled him up, and he was at times a level clearing special ability. Even though you already have one of those and it takes away from your life, we'll get to that. But the Ninja was that without having to lose that life. He was just incredible, and that ricocheting ability was a lifesaver. Then the Priest, he's average. He's got some slow recharge. He fires 3 homing magical orbs and casts a protective barrier around himself. His attack does increase damage against undead enemies, Leveling up increases damage and protective barrier for the priest. Then we have the thief. He's weak with average firepower, throws one or more bombs in a short forward arc, can detect hidden chests and traps, requires the diamond ring to recruit. Leveling up increases firepower and number of bombs thrown. Thief is helpful because there's at least one hidden chest in every floor. And then there are some hidden doors that will cause you to warp to different floors. So the thief is helpful. If you're that straightforward guy that's just going to go through floor by floor anyways, stick with the ninja. But you'll see, if you take the time to play the game, you will realize that there are multiple, and I do mean multiple, I think there's actually too many opportunities to switch your companion just on one floor, never mind the entire game.
Yes, true. So.
And the last is the wizard, and he has very high power, but obviously it's slow to recharge. He fires 2 or 4 magical orbs, depending on recharge time, in a forward spiral. Orbs also create a circular barrier when charged, and then level up increases his damage and orb set.
Yeah, thank you. Very good summary.
Yeah.
And all these characters did carry over Super NES version of the game, which is nice.
Yes.
So my thoughts are actually pretty close to yours. It's like, I think that the first half of the game, the ninja's my favorite character to use. It's like the reasons that you described.
Yeah.
Second half of the game, Lizard Man, I agree, is the best character.
Yep.
It's like if I can't get him, the Knight's a very good. The Knight's a very close second because Knight's also super badass. But the Knight doesn't show up until about like level 30 or whatnot. I think the Knight's definitely.
Yeah.
He's more like he's a late game companion, so we wouldn't get a chance to recruit him until then. So if you can't get the Lizard Man because you don't have the item, the Knight's a very good backup. So the original plan of the game during development, Capcom was going to have the player of 2 allies as opposed to just 1, but they had problems. Even the powerful CP hardware that the game was running on, they had problems getting it to work correctly. So correctly, they cut it down to one companion instead. And the secret doors, the warp points, were the last thing added in the game. Apparently, like what I heard. There are 7 secret doors altogether, like the arcade version. I think all 7 are in the Super NES version as well too. I didn't check that to confirm it, but I know the Super NES version does have secret doors present as well.
Yeah.
So I think they carried those over exactly. The Super NES version, however, does give you the advantage of picking a starting level. It's like the start of the game. You could pick a level. You have an option of several levels to start at the start of the game, going all the way up to about like level 25 or something like that. It's about halfway through the tower.
So you can either start at level 1 or as high as level 33.
33, yes, that's what it is. Yep. So I like that feature because you can you can jump ahead if you want to. Because there's no stage select or otherwise hit game beyond that. So, So gameplay is pretty standard as far as the gameplay of this type goes. You have both a hit bar gauge and also a magic meter. My main complaint of the game is the hit point gauge. This is one of those games where it's like you have to always be eating items because your health slowly decreases in time.
Right.
In lieu of having a timer, which I actually would have preferred, as much as I hate times in games, I would have preferred a timer in the game as opposed to like your health always decreasing like that, because I really do not like that system at all.
Yeah.
But you can have up to it's shown on screen as both a number and a bar. The bars indicate your current health. The number indicates how many bars in reserve you have on top of that. So it's like you can have a max of like 5 sets of bars per se, like full health. So and your companion has health bar as well too. The magic bar is kind of like your power, your power attack. Depending upon how filled up the magic bar is, depends upon what kind of attack you can do and how powerful it is. And again, like many games, if you just don't attack and wait a few seconds to build up your gauge, that's how you can that's how you can build it up to get the powerful attacks. You also can find items. There's a lot of items in this game. One that we're going to mention. One of the items you can find gives you a timer for your magic bar, where your magic bar is always filled up when you deliver you deliver your most powerful attacks until that timer runs out.
Yep.
So that's a pretty interesting system. It does give some it does help keep the gameplay fresh because all the companions you can have in the game. Because I really don't think any of the companions are horrible. I think they're all pretty decent companions, and definitely it's possible to win the game like any of them. So I think so that does offer some replayability like this game, which otherwise probably wouldn't have it.
Yeah, I agree.
So you also can get keys to unlock doors or whatnot, and you have to also find a certain key to unlock doors to advance the floor. Mm-hmm. In both the arcade and Super NES version, you're awarded points depending upon how you did on that floor, how quickly you went through it, the number of keys you found, that kind of stuff. And depending on how well you did, that also fills up that also gives you a health back. Yeah. So the better you do, the more health you gain. There's also cute little messages that show up on screen, like the climbing up floors, which is nice. So change the pace.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was very unique is that you can, depending on the floor that you defeat, you can get a sword, a new sword.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
You usually get those from bosses.
Yeah. So that was the next thing I was going to mention is that it's so after a boss fight you end up getting these new swords, and you carry it throughout your adventure, but you can lose it, which I thought was a really nice mechanic where, if you get hit, you drop that sword, you need to get that sword back. I don't know if there's a timer on it or not because I didn't. I don't
think there is.
Yeah, because I didn't ever lose one. But
right.
Yeah, I think that might have been maybe something to add into at least the port is have it somewhat of a timer, just because I feel I didn't feel this game was very hard to begin with. And then, of course, once you get the swords and, you get even more powerful, I just felt like if there was a consequence for losing it, it would just add, a little bit more of a difficulty to the game without being unfair,
Sure. Yes, I do think this game's a little bit easier compared to most arcade games at the time period for reasons we already talked about. The Super NES version is even easier, of course, because of the left enemies on screen attacking you and whatever. But it is what it is. So really, the programmers did the best job I could with the hardware available at the time. I think, as far as the port goes.
Yeah.
But there's totally counting also Drukmore, there's 8 bosses in the game. And the boss fights can be challenging at first, you don't know what to do. Once you learn the patterns and how to attack, it's a bit easier. So
yeah.
You can also do full screen attacks by any time you want to. At the cost of a full HP bar.
Yeah.
Or you can also find a magical book, which allows you to do them on demand, by penalty. Those full screen attacks can be very handy, especially during boss fights. And whatnot. So, for sure. So the fact is the fact of two endings, the fact is different characters you can use to play the game does give this game some replayability value. It's not a very long game. It's most playthroughs online, you average about an hour. So, there's no password in this game. The game really doesn't need it. The ability to be able to warp ahead in the game, either by game starts in Super NES version by picking your stage, or by finding a secret door, does allow you to skip ahead if you want to. That hour long gameplay is fully going through the game without any all 51 floors, no doors, whatever. So. The typical lane for hack and slash game, so I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, graphics are very nice. They're typical. Typical quality for early Super NES games. Like we mentioned before, there is a downgrade from the arcade version, but it looks very nice. So, I thought the graphics of the game are pretty good overall. I thought.
Yeah.
The characters are big and detailed. The backgrounds have lots of detail. Not a lot of color, not a lot of colors used, but all things considered, like it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, as far as like a port of the arcade, they did a really good job with this. I think the graphics look fine. Like you said, it's an earlier Super Nintendo game, so I can't knock it too much for how it looks because yes, obviously things beyond this were going to look better. Knights of the Round comes to mind when it comes to how the graphics could be better. But again, one of the things I think that is fantastic with this game is the music.
Yes,
I think the music is fantastic. It's not. It can get repetitive, but it's not like, oh my god, I don't want to hear this again. Repetitive. It's actually welcomed. I felt like the soundtrack has a Castlevania undertone to it.
Sure.
And that alone, that whenever I play Castlevania, half the reason, because I suck at those games, half the reason I slog through them is because the music is so good it gets you pumped and you want to play through it. And it's the same thing with this. The soundtrack is fantastic. I could be dying left and right, but that soundtrack's going to keep me going.
Yeah, and again, it's the same music like the arcade version, downgraded, of course, to the Super NES hardware. But yeah, I agree with you. The game, regardless of arcade or Super NES, has very good music. It's very good. They're very fitting. Sound effects in this game, I didn't care for all that much. That little grunt your character makes every now and then when he's attacked, I find annoying. But yeah, the music in this game makes up for it for sure. So I also wanted to mention the game also has very different backgrounds for the backgrounds like the floors. They're not cookie cutters of each other. I do appreciate the very wide mix of backgrounds for the floors. The one floor like you're in space almost.
Yeah.
But so another floor going through another floor like you're like in a magical hot room with like fire raging everywhere, and so the screen is a very like shimmery effect to it because of that. The backgrounds in this game like very well done.
Yeah, for sure.
So like overall, as we mentioned before, this is a very good port. Like the arcade game. I think this game, again, another game that you compare this to is Final Fight because again, Capcom had to make sacrifices on Final Fight to get that game on Super NES as well too. One player only, reduced enemies, making the game easier. So again, you compare this game a lot to so you compare this conversion a lot like Final Fight. Would I like to have seen like an arcade perfect version, arcade perfect port of the game? Sure, but I think that as mentioned, for this time period in which the hardware and experience was what it was, I thought overall this is a very good port for the arcade version, as we already talked about here. Anybody who enjoys hack and slash games definitely should check this out. But they haven't already played it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Super NES version has never been re-released. But as Joe mentioned, the arcade version of the game is commonly available.
Yeah.
It was first available. It was first available on the Capcom Classic Collection remixed, like the PSP. Like later on, Capcom Classic Collection Volume 2, like the PS2 and the Xbox, and then Joe just mentioned he has it on the Capcom Arcade Second Stadium collection for the Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Steam. So that version is currently available right now. So if you want to play this game, that's the version to get for sure. So it also was included alongside of Final Fight Double Impact on the Xbox Live and the PSN back in 2010.
Yeah, and that allowed for network multiplayer, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I had bought it for the PS3 when it came out, and I didn't even think about what it came with. This was my first opportunity to buy an arcade perfect Final Fight. So that was the whole reason I jumped on it. Finding out that I got Magic Sword with it was just a bonus. And Yeah, I mean, I played mostly, obviously, Final Fight, and being able to play online was fantastic. And, like I said, I had played this, MAME-wise, but I didn't even play it on that Double Impact collection that I had, which is, ridiculous. But, whenever I powered that baby on, I was looking to play some Final Fight, not Magic Sword.
Yeah. They probably delisted that game by now, I'm sure.
I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah. Also no longer available. I was surprised to learn there had been a mobile port of this game available in 2008. So, yeah, that was probably pretty rough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I'm sure that version is no longer available either. Given how long it's been.
Right.
So, the arcade version, as I mentioned before, you did very well. Super NES version got more mixed reviews for the same reasons we already talked about before. Most people, a lot of people praised it as being a very fun game in its own right and a very good Super NES port, but. Of course, there were the issues about the slowdown, the conversion, whatever. The same issues that we were talked about. Nintendo Power back in the day gave the Super NES version a 14 out of 20. Like an example, Aggravator has the game rating score for the Super NES port is a 64%, which I think is a bit low personally, but. Yeah. The arcade version, however, is commonly available these days. The Super NES version is good if you want to play it that way, but with the arcade version being so cheaply available these days, the arcade version of the game is obviously the way to think.
Agreed.
But this game I think is still pretty fun to play today. I think even still very it's still a very fairly easy but fun hack slash game with enough variety with weapons and characters and whatnot to keep it coming back more for a while. I think so. I think this is one of those rare 90s arcade games that still so just much fun to play today. Like it was back then.
For sure.
Anything else you want to say about the game, Joe, before I finish up here?
No, just that I mirror what you said, and I absolutely suggest if you're a hack and slash fan. You should definitely check this out. I think you'll find some fun in it. Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. Besides the game having an option mode, in it, which allows you to your difficulty level, easy, normal, hard, or remap the controller, you can also access a hidden additional option menu, which allows you to do even more options of the game. To do that on the option screen, put the cursor on exits, and then hold L, R, and start, curl 2, and then while holding down those buttons, exit the option screen on curl 1, and now bring up a new option screen which allows you to bring up more options of the game. So, were you able to get that working? Yes, I did. Okay, because I tried it, and for some reason, I don't know, I couldn't get it to work. So I was wondering if maybe that was an error. It's touchy. You have to do it exactly right. So. Okay. I think that's, but yeah, that's the only code or trick I found this game. So, the game is actually somewhat expensive on eBay. Probably because of the fact maybe it didn't have a big run, maybe just because it's a very popular game still, but this is definitely a bit more pricier as far as Super NES games go, I thought. Commonly available, 59 copies listed on eBay at the time of doing research. 40 of them slightly recently sold. Cart prices, these prices include shipping. Cart prices range anywhere from $21 to $53. So, a little bit more pricier than your average Super NES game. CIB pricing the same way anywhere from $112 to $181. So a little bit more expensive to get for your collection, if you want it that way, but not outrageous. I don't think. I think it's affordable. It's just a bit pricier than your usual Super NES game. Yeah. So, but anyway, and then the. How much you say for the Capcom collection, Joe? So I don't know if it's still on sale, but the Stadium 2 collection was $30, and the first collection was $20.
How many games were in that?
Oh, let's see.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I looked it up. 32 games.
Okay, there we go.
That's less than that's less than $1 a game. So that's like pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah. Actually, I'll check this out myself then, because look at the list here. This is like a this is like a great list of arcade games. But you got play of all the 19XX games here.
Yep.
You've got the Bionic Commando, which kind of sucks at arcade, I think. Commando's a great game. Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Trojan, Strider, Street Fighter 2, Mercs, Final Fight, Dynasty Wars, Geeky Wing, Street Fighter 2.
Yep.
Warriors of Fate. Yeah, this is a great collection.
Yeah, and the second one also has 32 titles as well. And
oh yeah, that's just like collection 1, but yeah.
Pretty much, if you want all the heavy hitters for Capcom fighting games, you get them between these two collections. You got all your Street Fighters, you got all the Night Stalker games, or Dark Savior. They have, I think, Pocket Fighter was one of the ones that's in there.
Mega Man 1 and 2, the fighting games.
Yep, the Mega Man 1 and 2 fighting games. So, yeah, they definitely did a really good job as far as what games they
Black Tiger, the game which inspired this game, Magic Sword, is also available on the second collection too.
Yes.
So, they also have a wrestling game here. Saturday Night.
That's more of a fighting game, but yeah, it's Saturday Night Slam Masters, which is a fantastic game.
Cool. All right. Awesome. All right then. Well, I'm glad this game's commonly available. Because you're definitely worth it. But all right, everybody. Appreciate you being here as always. Thank you. Thank you for giving us like here's every day. If you want to give us feedback, we have a Facebook page, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNES Podcast at yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you at?
You can find me on Twitter at JOESUX30. Plus, I have a very public Facebook, and also the Radical Retro Roundup. Check it out.
Yes, you're doing some good stuff over there. Some weird stuff, but some good stuff. But so yeah, before the podcast, Joe and I hashed out a list of games to cover the podcast coming up. We actually have a list of games ready to go all the way up through October. So we have most of the year planned out now, which is good.
Yeah.
Obviously. I'm not going to have the whole list here because, of course, changes may happen depending upon things. But like I mentioned before, during the podcast, if somebody has a game, there's a game they want us to cover, we definitely more than happy to accommodate and bump up the list for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But having said that, we have a pretty good mix here of games. I think, some popular games, like some obscure games, some probably bad games, and games I've never even heard of. Which, of course, with libraries big Super NES, that's to be expected. That's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons we do this podcast. So we decided next time to cover a pick from Joe. He wants to cover the Power Ranger trilogy, which I never have played, because you were a Power Ranger fan growing up as a kid, Joe, right?
I mean, I was a teenager and probably shouldn't have been watching Power Rangers, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
But also, because, I'm like 14, 15 by the time this comes out. But to be fair, yes, I mean, I loved it. And, at the time I was, had just been introduced to anime, so I was big into Japanese culture and getting into all that. So, like, the Sentai shows coming over and being the Power Rangers, that's what hooked me more than anything else.
Right, makes sense.
And of course, I never grew up, so the toys were awesome, and I bought all the toys and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And the show's still around today. So.
And the show is still around today, which is crazy. But yeah, so this will be what I call the Power Rangers trilogy. It is Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the game, then Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the fighting game, and then Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie game. So
4 games altogether, if I counted correctly?
Nope, 3. It's 3.
3 games. Okay,
yep.
All right, yeah, okay.
That's why it's the Power Rangers trilogy.
Yeah.
So yeah, this will be fun because I definitely I seek these out specifically because I had the Genesis version, which we didn't get any cool side-scrolling beat-em-ups. We only got a fighting game. So I'll talk about that on the podcast as well. But yeah, this will be fun for sure.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. like I said, I have no experience at all with the show. I have, I have no experience at all with like these games. I have very little exposure to the show, just like bits and pieces here and there.
I was going to say you got to watch at least one episode of the original show if you haven't seen it.
It's pretty corny, but
it is.
Yeah. So we'll get to that next time. So tune in for that. As always, we appreciate everybody out there listening to the podcast. Hope to hear from you guys soon. Hope everybody out there stays safe, be well. Okay, and we'll catch you again next time.
Stay warm.
Later.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Steam Pump.